Okay, hello and welcome everyone into today's video. My name is Pranoy Sarkar and I wanted to show you a quick demo of our platform 5. Now 5 is a low-code development environment that helps developers rapidly build and deploy business applications. Now when you first open up 5, this is the first page you're going to see, which is a landing page. Now here you'll find a bunch of resources. You'll find some videos which will help you into using a template applications, and you'll find other resources over here such as a user community, a YouTube, and our blogs. Okay, now the question is that how do we get started from here if I want to make my first application inside 5? Okay, in order to get started, we simply click on applications here on top. And now I get this interface through which I can click on this yellow plus button, which says add item. And now I get this interface through which I can start naming my application. So let's give it a title. I'll call it my first app. And after done with that, I'll simply click on save. And once my application has done saving, it'll appear here on this list. And you'll also get access to this blue manage button. And once you click on that, you'll get transported into the development environment of 5. Okay, now I'm inside the development environment of 5. As you can see from over here, we have a bunch of menus. We have visual, logic, data, task, setup, and tools. And all of these menus will have a bunch of features inside them. For example, visual will have form wizard, chart wizard, etc. Similarly with logic, where you can use these features to write your own code. We have data and task, etc. So you can use these features to start building your applications inside 5. Now what I have here currently is an application called as my first app that I made in front of you. And of course this application has nothing in it because it's a brand new application. Now what I'll do is I'll just quickly run this application from this run button over here. And if I click on that, and bam, now I get my application in front of me. Now as you can see, it's a completely blank application, but by default we get a header bar on top with some widgets like avatar, bell icons, help section, a breadcrumb, some navigation tools, a hamburger menu, and we also get a sidebar on the left. Apart from that, we have a blank application which has nothing in it. So let me quickly exit out of here and let's go back to the development environment and let's start building something on top of it. Now, let's say that we are a developer who wants to basically build an application inside 5, and let's keep a very simple use case. Let's say that we have a table in our database. Let's say we have a product table and we want to, or a customer table actually, and we want to populate that with a form on the front end. Now it's a very simple use case, but the question is how fast can it be built inside 5? Okay, so what I'll do is first I'll make my customer table. So in order to make tables inside 5, we can click on data and then simply click on table wizard. Once I'm inside the wizard, I'll start naming it. I'll call it my the customer table. And then we can add in certain fields over here as well. Let's keep 3 fields. I'll call it my name, their email, and of course the customer's city. Okay. Now from over here under this lookup, I can change the data type into any supported SQL data type. But just to be safe, I'm going to keep them all as text and give them a default size. Now once I'm done with that, I'll hover over here on the checkmark icon and click on save. Now 5 is asking me if I like to populate this table with some pre-existing data on some other table that we might have in our database. But currently we have a completely new application, which and this is our first table, so we'll just click on save. Now, if you click on data and then database modeler, now you get to see the table that we have built in front of us. Now, this is not just a simple UML diagram. This is a visual database modeler. That means we can basically put in any changes over here that we could do in the wizard. For example, let's say that we want to change or edit out one of the fields of our table. So what we'll do is we'll simply hover over this any field that we want to change, and then we simply double click on them. After clicking on them, 5 now opens up all of its details in front of me, and I'm free to change around anything that I want over here. Right now I'll just click on done because I don't want any changes. Similarly, if I click on add fields, I can add more fields into my table, as well as if I click on add table, I can add tables in the database as well. Now I'm talking about databases and as well. Now, one thing you might have noticed is that 5, that, nope, sorry, from here. Okay. Now, one thing you might have noticed is that when we created our table, we made only 3 fields, which is name, email, and city. But right now, our table has a 4th and an extra field here called as customer key. Now, this customer key is also this table's primary key, which is indicated by this key icon over here. Now, this is because whenever we make tables, and in fact, whenever we even build relationships inside 5 with other tables, 5 actually generates your foreign and your primary keys for you. That means is that whenever you're dealing with the data, you don't have to worry about your external keys or internal keys. 5 will take care of that for you. Okay. Now, I'll keep on talking about tables in our databases. And so one thing I actually forgot to mention was that I'd like to talk about right now is that whenever we make an application inside 5 actually gives you a dedicated MySQL database with each application that you make inside it. So that actually now gives us the ability to create tables inside 5. Now that is why we can do these things that we did right now. But let's say that we do not want that internal database, but we want to connect 5 to an external database. So that can also, but let's say that we do not want to use this internal MySQL database, but we want to connect 5 to an external database that we have sitting somewhere. So good news, 5 also support external databases, and that can easily be done by clicking on data and then going to databases. That can easily, so good news, 5 actually supports external databases, and that can easily be done by, first of all, logging out of my developer account, because currently inside 5 I've logged in as a developer. So what I'll do is I'll log out as a developer and log in as an administrator. Now let's go back to our application that we just made. Click on manage. Now if I click on data and then databases, you see that I have my MySQL database right here with me. If I click on that, I can reset my development database. I can import it as an SQL dump, as well as I can export it if I want to use it somewhere else. Okay. Now, let's go back to talking about an external database. Let's say that we don't want to use this MySQL database and we want to use an external database. What we'll do is we'll simply click on add item. And now I'll pass in a database ID over here. Whatever I want to call my database, I'll call it the external DB. And over here on this lookup, I can select the type of database that I want, which is MS SQL, MySQL, Postgres, and SQLite. Now, since we'll use an Azure database, which is an MS SQL, so we'll just put click that over here, and we're good. Now I'm going to pass in a simple connection string over here for my external database. Now this connection string is gonna be for in this particular database. Now here I have an external Azure test database, as you can see from over here, and our currently database is called as DemoDB. And as you can see, we have only 2 tables that we need to care about here, which is product and orders. And if I go inside product, let's go around and click on edit data. And as you can see, it has some data in it. It has a product key fields, a name, SKU, description, and price. If you go back to Azure Test DB, now I minimize this and I'll simply pass a connection string over here. Okay, so I have passed in my connection string over here. Now I'll click on save. And now I'm done. Essentially now 5 is connected to both our internal MySQL data. And on top of that, it is also connected to your external database, which is our Azure database. So our single app can communicate with both of them. Okay, now let us go back to the development environment by logging out as an admin and logging back as a developer. Nope. Okay, now let us jump back to our development environment. Let us go to applications. And now let's log out as a developer and log back in as an admin. I'm so sorry, I meant log out as a admin and log in as a developer, because now we're going to start the development work inside our application. So basically why we have to log in and log out as an admin is because the admin has certain set of privileges that the developer account doesn't inside 5. Basically, the administrators can make applications inside 5. They can play around with the databases and the deployment. The rest of the entire development work are done by developer accounts inside 5. So now I'm logged in as a developer account. I'll go to my application that we just made, and now I click on manage, and now I'm inside our application. Okay. So now, since we have a table and we are now also connected to our external database, okay, now what I want to talk about is that let's say that we do not want to use the internal MySQL database and we do not even have an external database, but instead we want to use an API as a data source. So what you can do is if you click on data and now if you click on connection wizard, you see now if you're familiar with Postman, you get a very familiar interface. Basically what 5 is asking you is to put in all of your endpoints for your API. So here you'll put in your get all, get single, create single, update single, and delete single. So you put in your endpoints over here, essentially 5 then will read your API and then you can even use it as a data source. So just for a quick recap, 5 gives you an internal MySQL database. On top of that, you can connect to any external database, and also you can use REST API as a data source. Okay, so now enough with our data sources. Now let me talk about actually building features. So first thing first, let's talk about actually writing queries. So it's probably not a surprise since we can build tables inside 5. We can also write queries. So we click on data and then queries. Now I can now essentially click on add item. Now 5 is asking me for which database I would like to build my query for, my internal database, which is my first AppDB, or the external one. Let me show you how the internal one first, and then we can jump onto the external database as well. So I selected my first DB. Let's give it a name. I'll call it my, we'll just call it my query for now as a dummy name. And then we click here. And let's click on SQL first. On the SQL tab, basically 5 opens up an editor which is very similar to MySQL, similar to SQL workbenches. For example, you can write any sort of complicated query over here. Let me just do something really quickly. Select star from our customer table. Since we are connected to an internal database, we only have access to our customer table. Now if I click on run, now 5 runs my query right over here. Now since we do not have anything in a customer table, which we just built a couple of minutes ago, it's simply showing us no records. Now one more thing is that let's say that we are a developer, but we hate SQL and we do not like working on SQL. So what we'll do instead is that instead of actually writing SQL, I can click on designer and now I can build my queries visually. So example, add table. If we click on add table, we select my customer table and now I get my customer table in front of me. And now let's say that I want to quickly build a query which displays their name, email, and city. So I'll double click on name, double click on email, and double click on city. And as you can see, all of them are appeared on over here because I've selected them. And I have a bunch of other things that I can use the designer to modify and actually get my own queries. But what I'll do is I'll simply click on run. And as you can see, now this version of a query only has 3 fields, name, email, and city. But again, we don't have any records in it, so it's showing it as empty. So now what I'll do is I'll cancel this query. And now I'll connect it to our external database, which is our Azure DB, which already has some record in it. So now we go back to our SQL. And if I just do a select star from product table and click on run, now you can see 5 talks to our Azure database and I get all of my records here right in front of me. Now this statement is just an example, but you can of course, as I said earlier, write complicated queries as well. For example, I already have some period in SQL which I'm just going to paste. So here, now you can see this query is even doing an order by and a join. And what it's doing is it's showing us the name of a product, and now it's also talking to the orders table and showing that their order date for that product and the amount of quantity that they have ordered. So now if I click on run, now again I get my query right here in front of me. I get to see the product name, the orders key, the order date, and the quantity. Let us also ask 5 to show us the product key. And let's click on run. And now you can see we can also get a product key right over here. All right, now let's click on save. Now let's give it this name, since we are talking about mostly showing details of our product. So I'll just call it my product query. Now the naming makes more sense. Now I click on fields to see all the fields which are available in my query. So I can see I have my product key, which we added in just later, name, orders key, order date, and quantity. Now I'll go to indices and I'll tell 5 that yes, this query has a primary key. And what I'll do is, so we select the key type primary, and now we're just informing 5 that this product key, we go to index fields, we add an index field, and we select product key as our primary key. Click on save, and we can save again. Essentially now we are telling 5 that this is talking to a external table, and it also has a primary key in it. You do not need to do this, but it just works as a good practice. Okay, so let's click on save again. And I'm done with my query. Okay, so since I have built a query, I would like to make 3 things of it. First, I would like to make a form. Second, I would like to use the data inside my query and visualize it in a chart. And third, I would like to make a report of my data. So let's see how we can do that. First is our form. So if I click on visual and I clicked on form wizard, now I get this interface. Firstly, my form is asking for which data source I would like to build my table for. So I can talk to my customer table or the product query that we just built. So if I clicked on our first, let's talk to our internal database, which is our customer table. So if I clicked on customers, now you can see 5 essentially fills in most of my information for me. Now again, reiterating, the customer table is a part of our internal database. And the next, so if I click on next, you see 5 again fills in most of my information for me. So essentially what 5 is telling me is that I have 3 fields called as name, email, and city with its respective captions. Again, the same, I can change around them if I want to, but I'll just keep them as it is. Here I can change around most of the details, but again, I would like to keep things simple and just simply click on save. Now, once I'm done with my form for my customer table, now let us do it for our query, which is talking to our external database. So essentially we'll have one form for our internal database and one for our external one. So now again, 5 fills in most of my information for me. If I click on next, again, it's doing the same thing. Now, but here, since let's just give it some better captions, let's not call them order date, let's just call them order date and quantity. So essentially you can also change out the captions if you want. And we have the, of course, details over here, but again, I'll just simply click on save. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to run the application and show you how these 2 small changes with our forms have affected our end user application. So I clicked on run and instantly 5 opened up the application, and as you can see, my app already looks a lot different basically. First, on the sidebar, which was earlier empty, now I have 2 menu items. One is our customer form, which is our internal database. Another is our product queries, which is a form talking to our external database. Firstly, let's add in some records to our internal database through a customer form. So I click on add item over here. You can see I get all 3 fields here. So let me just start adding in some data here. Let's do it. Prannoy. So I get all 3 of my fields here, just name, email, and city. So let's just start filling in it. I'll just call this one Prannoy. That's my name. My email is prannoy@5.co, and the city is Brisbane. Once you're done with that, we click on save, and I can see my name right over here. Let's add in one more record just to see how it works. I'll call this one John Doe. Email can be the most creative email, john@email.com. City can be the most creative city, again Brisbane, and we click on save. Now you can see both of my records, which is if I click on my name Prannoy, I get to see all of my details, and if I click on John's name, I get to see all of John's name as well. So it just works like a form that we built in a couple of steps. Now if we clicked on our products query, which is our form which is talking to our external database, you can see it just works like that. But instead of just getting in our records that we just created, we see that it's talking to external database, we get the products, the order dates, and the quantities. Okay, so let me go back to our application. Now, since we have built forms and we are essentially talking to our external database, now since we have built forms, now the next two things I want to do is I would like to use the data in my just sitting in my external database and would like to visualize that in a form and also make a report out of that. So what I'll do is I click on visual, and the first step would be to create a chart. So we'll click on chart wizard. Now here I get this interface. First we'll start by naming a chart. I'll just call it my product chart. In the data source, let's select our product query, which is talking to our external database, and we get the query right over here. In the X value column, select the product name, and in the Y value column, I'll select the quantity. And instantly, you can see my chart here live in front of me. In the chart area title, basically Fiverr is asking if I want to give it a title which will appear on the top of the chart. So let's give that a title. I can just call it products, and then I can toggle if I want to display it or not. I can see products that appear on top. Over here, I can change which kind of chart that I want, and you can see a bunch of options over here, but I'll just keep it as bar graph to keep things simple, and it also looks pretty clean. And I can change around many things over here and also change around this color, but let's just stick with the default color for now. And once I'm done with that, I click on save, and I'm done with my charts as well. And my last step would be to make a report of my data. Similarly, how we created charts, we clicked on visual, but instead of chart wizards, we click on reports now. Once I'm inside reports, we'll click on add item. Inside add item, let's start in by naming a report. I'll just call it my product report because essentially we're showing the same thing. Now, first thing my report want is which data source. So we'll click on data sources. Let's click on add data source and select our product query. Let's click on save. Let's go back to general. And now let's click on template. Now what Five does is this opens up this rich editor in front of you, which has a bunch of tools which you can use to start building your reports. From on top, you can see we have a bunch of formatting tools and everything else. And over here, we have tools which is specifically for reports. We can add headers, footers, and page number, page breaks. We can add, edit out. And through this interface, we can easily also build tables instantly. Now, let's say that we don't actually like the rich interface, but we want to do things to code. So don't worry, we got you covered. If you click over here, which has this symbol, now Five converts the entire editor into a HTML and CSS editor. So essentially, you can write in whatever HTML CSS you want, and you have all the freedom you want over here to create your reports. Now, for example, I have some pre-written HTML and HTML that I'll just paste over here. Bam. As you can see, that comes with all the syntax highlighting and everything else, just like normal HTML. Of course, it's just not formatted really well, but that's completely my fault. And now the thing I want to show you is that when I made changes inside my HTML, if I click back on this button, everything will be converted right back into the visual editor. So it's again a to-and relation, just like our designer SQL. Any changes that you make over here can be converted right back into the HTML editor, and any change that you make in the HTML editor can be instantly seen over here in the visual editor as well. So what I'll do now is I'll simply click on save. And I'll click on save again. And I'm done. Now, once I'm done with my report and I'm also done with my chart, so what I'll do is I like to put these into my end user application. And now that can be easily done by clicking on visual and then going to menus. Once I'm inside menus, I'll click on add item. Let's add in our chart first. So we'll call it the product chart. Menu order can be third, so that it appears third on the menus. And the action, let's select our chart. And we're done. Let's do the exact same thing, but for our product report. Menu order can be fourth, and the action simply can be a report as well. Let's click on save, and now let's run our application and see how these changes are affected our end user app. And now you can see I have two new menu items called as chart and report. So if I click on chart, as you can see, I see my chart live in front of me. Now if I click on reports, as you see, I get to see my reports live in front of me, which contains information from my external table. As you can see, I get to see my report light in front of me with all the information that I wanted to show. Okay, and now let us go back into our application. Let me just delete all the other tabs here. Okay, so now we made a database table, we connected to an external database, and we made a form for both our internal and external. Okay, okay, so now just for a quick recap, we made an internal database, we connected to an Azure database as well, we made 2 forms, a chart and a report. So now let me quickly wrap this up by making just 3 small changes into my application. First, I would like to attach a theme into an application because currently it looks very generic. And second, I would like to convert this into a multi-user app so that whenever I run my app for the next time, I actually have some authentication. And thirdly, I would like to add a license agreement so that whenever a user wants to use my app for the first time, they have to accept my terms and conditions first. So this sound like pretty big changes, but let me show you how quickly we can do that inside 5. Okay, first things first, if we clicked on setup and we click on themes and I click on add item, now I can name my theme. No, I'll just call it my dark theme. Oops, dark theme. We click on edit theme. Now here 5 opens up this point and click theme editor in front of you. Now basically you can make any changes to your application just by clicking on them. So let's say if I want to change the color of the header bar, click on the header bar and drag and drop it to any color of your choice. And there you go. Let's see if you want to change that font. Click on that font, change it to, let's say, some good font. I wouldn't pick any bad font. Let's say, nah, I just picked a bad font. But yeah, you get the point. We can change that font as well. Now, we also recognize that some people actually do not enjoy the restrictionness of the point and click editor and they want more freedom. So we have also in the advanced section given you the entire CSS of our entire application. So basically what this means is that you have all the freedom that you want here and you can change it on anything that you see in the application. For example, over here, I have again some pre-written CSS. So what I'll do is I'll just copy that and I'll paste it over here. And I'll go back to my theme and bam. Firstly, you notice that you get that my application already looks a little different from my theme tab. And secondly, any changes that you make inside the advanced tab will be shown directly in the theme tab as well. So what this means is that whenever you make changes to your CSS, you don't have to run your application again and again to actually see your changes. Okay, now I'll click on save. Click on save again. And let me quickly attach my theme to my application. We click on instances. We click on edit. And now basically if I was asking me to which theme, so I'll click on dark theme and give it a user interface between Boston and New York. If I selected Boston, basically my menu items, as you see, are appearing on the left. They will keep on remaining on the left. But if I selected New York, my menus will jump from the sidebar to the top, just like it's shown inside 5. So if I select New York, I'll show you how our application looks now. Okay, now let's click on save and we are done. Now, just before actually launching the application again, what I would like to do is I would like to log out as an administrator, log out as a developer again, sorry, and log in as an administrator because we would require the administrator rights again. Sign in. And now we'd like to go back to my application, click on app that we just built, click on edit instead of manage, we click on edit. And now once I'm inside this page, I get to see all of the details of my application. First things first, you must have noticed that we have a multi-user button over here. Now when I toggle it, what this means is now essentially 5 converts my entire application into a multi-user app. So it will create a login page for me. It will make features such as forgot password, and it even pushes a user table into our internal MySQL database through which we can keep a tab of all the users of application. So with one click of a button, our application is converted into a multi-user app, and it's that simple. Second was to add a license agreement. So you must notice in the bottom field, we have this field called as license agreement. So if I click on that, 5 again opens up this rich editor in front of me, and I can just type in whatever terms and conditions I want over here. And of course, I can convert the entire thing into HTML as well. Let me just type in terms. So I'll just type something basic. Please accept our conditions. ... and we click on save, and we click on save again. Now let's run our application, the run button, and see our final changes. And bam, we are firstly greeted with the login page. So whenever you're greeted with the login page for the first time inside Five, what you want to do is you want to set up the password for your admin account. And that can easily be done by typing an admin in the username and admin in the password. We click on sign in. And now Five prompts me to update with a more secure password instead of admin. So we'll do that. And click on update password. And now second, I get my terms and conditions page, which says exactly what I wanted to. Please accept my conditions. So I'll do that. I'll click on the check mark to accept my conditions. And now I unlock the continue button. So we click on continue, and bam, now I'm inside my application. So it's essentially the same app that we built, but with a lot of other things. Firstly, our menu item, I shifted from left to on the top over here. Secondly, our application looks a lot different with the new theme, and it looks much cleaner and much more professional. Thirdly is that now instead of our 4 menu items, I have an extra menu over here called as users. Basically, the administrators have control towards for all the users in an application. And since our application is a multi-user app, Five has added this menu for the administrator users through which they can manage all the users of the application. Okay, a lot of things that I can talk about over here. Let's say if I go back to my development environment, so you can see that we have a bunch of the things, like we have tools, we have setup, task, data. We also have logic, which has our code editor. So if I click on our code editor, essentially Five opens up this editor, which will be very similar to Visual Studio. So developers have the familiarity. Now over here, let me just make a new function. I'll just call it new function. Here I can select my language between JavaScript and TypeScript based on what's comfortable to you. Let's just select JavaScript. Now you can write your JavaScript over here. Now, what I would encourage you to do is that I would encourage you to go to our website, which is five.co. And here, what you can do is you can sign up for free. After you have done signing up, you'll get a download link from the email that you provide over here, through which you can download Five completely for free, and you can run it on your system locally. And then you can have a play around with it. And that's the best way to actually learn Five. So go ahead, play around with Five, and also you can jump onto our community. Over here, you'll find a bunch of other resources which you can use to understand Five, as well as we have our blogs, as well as we have use cases, which are template applications that you can just download and import them inside Five and just get started. Of course, I can keep on talking more and more about Five, but I would like to just end this over here. And thank you all for watching our video. And if you liked our content, make sure to like and subscribe for future videos. Till then, see you all very soon. And again, thank you very much.